of flesh and blood.
Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you so much for being with us here on the program. We are here Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., and we are streaming live at richarddugan.com. We also have a program on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. We hope that you will look into that, because I think that it will be a good addition to some of the stuff that we're all looking at doing, and that is making this a better place for everyone. We also are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, many other locations on the internet, just too many to mention. And then we are on YouTube, where you can listen to and watch these interviews. We hope that you will. We also ask that if you can help us out financially, we would greatly appreciate that. We have a PayPal account. It's there for your security as well as ours. And one of the things we're going to remember to talk to our guest today about is this whole aspect of going within and listening to that still small voice during the decade of perfect vision. We hope that you will spend some time doing that. And with that, we bring back, believe it or not, to our microphones and our cameras for the fifth time. That's right. Really? For the fifth time in quite literally 3-4 years, we have Dianne Collins, and she is the creator of something rather spectacular you're going to want to find out more about. And that has to do with a book that she has created, as well as a system called QuantumThink. And the book is entitled, Do You Quantum Think? New Thinking That Will Rock Your World. And she also has a new song that's actually copyrighted in 2021, but we have been able to hear it for the first time, and you will hear it at the end of this program. We hope that you will stay with us. Dianne, it is wonderful to have you back again to literally continue our conversation, because, well, as time goes on, you and I, we're both growing and learning and experiencing, and we come up with new stuff that comes our way, whether it isn't so much that we created it as much as it just kind of comes to us. Thanks for being with us.
Right. It's so wonderful always to be in conversation with you, Richard, and to be on Tell Me Your Story. And that's such a great title. And I love your musical intro to the show. And, it is very interesting what you're saying, because there's certain people who, as we all know, you can resonate with anyone just by power of intent. But I think there are some things that are almost a destinal connection. And I think you and I have that, a destiny, where whenever we talk, it's so uplifting for me. And our intent, of course, is that it will be for all your listeners and viewers.
Well, it's one of the things that we are going to touch on is a question that I think you started out in this whole area asking, and that is, what is the access to creating the results we truly want? We talk about that in the context of giving people choices and knowledge of those choices to help make their dreams come true. And the more choices that we can provide people with, the greater the opportunities are for them to make their heart's desire come true. Although I will ask you this in this context, because I know we touched upon this some time ago, sometimes we start asking for things that really are not in our best interest, but we want it anyway. And I think that's something, it's almost like, it's like that proverbial little kid, who says, I want this. Like if you're in a toy store, I want this, I want this, I want this. And we just keep asking and asking. And sometimes the universe will acquiesce and say, all right, if that's what you want, but bear in mind, there are what we might call unintended consequences. Talk to us a little bit about that aspect, and we'll get into the whole aspect of creating but we kind of do that unconsciously, don't we? Many
Well,
people have been doing that.
I think that is an intriguing question, to say the least, and an important one, because when you think about that, we have been born, you say, what my original question when I was born, what is the access that we have as human beings? I was going to say ordinary, but none of us are ordinary, but let's say an ordinary daily life. Being aspects of divine creator, source creator, however one wants to relate, or just infinite intelligence, if you don't want to think of it as a specific entity. But obviously, we are part and parcel of an infinite intelligence that is mysterious and magnificent beyond what any of us can even fathom. And it continues. So you think, well, people look in the world and say, well, why are there so many bad things going on? Why do we have so much misery? Why is there suffering? And this really, I'm going to get to what you're asking about, because I think it's a great point to ask that question. That we've been born with the power of intent. And when you talk about choices, well, if we are at conscious awareness with our choices, and I think that really is the heart of the matter, Richard, because we have an aspect of ourselves, and this is where quantum, what's quantum thinking? That we have been born into a field effect of a way of thinking that is rather conceptual in nature, and a lot of the automaticity comes out. What you said about the child going in, I want this, I want that, I want that. So in that instance, or in many, we're all like big children, right? That we have a lot of that automaticity going on. Now, I say blame it on being brought up in a context for thinking that was the industrial age, the age of machines. It gave rise to the age of machines, the genius age. And now we're in the quantum age. So we have already evolved. Now what needs to evolve is the way we think and how we relate to our own consciousness, our own awareness, and our own system of thinking. Quantum think is a system of 21, what I call distinctions in new thinking, that are based in quantum principles. We can go into a little of them. And I know your audience is very familiar with a lot of the quantum principles. You talk about it a lot. And the merging of it, the re-merging of it with spiritual wisdom that is common to all great mastery traditions. So when you look at this whole thing, it's a long answer, so let me bring this to a point where when we are in, we could say, the state of clarity, the state of higher awareness, the state of being aware of our own awareness, even though these automatic reactions or automatic behaviors, automatic ways of thinking, I have a word for them in quantum think, I call them least action pathways, a hyphenated word, least action, meaning the least conscious action. Least action pathway, because it's been that route before. So it's automatic, and the brain actually makes connections based on it. So, but the point is, we, I believe, are beyond our brain. Okay. I know that people are now doing a lot of work with the brain, which is great when you're, in an acute state of, well, I don't want to get on that tangent yet. Let me finish this point. So when you talk about choice, what I call the myth of choice is that we imagine we think freely and independently, but a lot of the time we don't. And we don't realize that we're thinking within the larger context of the system. the industrial age, I lovingly call the old worldview thinking, the quantum age, which is the more expansive, up-to-date, and more enlightened principles to be thinking and living from. So the greater our own awareness in the moment, the clearer the static of our own energy field, then we are at choice. If you're just in an automatic reaction to circumstances of life, whether it's reading the news, whether it's, choosing what to eat or whatever it is, you're not actually at choice. Now, the fact is, you could still say, I want that, I want that, I want that. I know my desire body is I like a lot of good things. Okay, let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're here to enjoy. But this is the main point, is that how do we use that dynamic principle that we have been imbued with by virtue of human birth from divine spirit, the power of intent, which is the active dynamic of creation for human beings that we get to use. And I think the idea, and this is what my work is about, it's a mastery practice. The idea is to learn to use these faculties of mind, meaning consciousness as our individuated form of consciousness, to learn to actually tap into and use the faculties of mind in a way that makes us effective so that we can get what we want, not only for ourselves and our loved ones, our communities, but for the world at large. Does that make sense?
It does indeed. It does indeed. And especially the aspect that you described of this sort of automatic or knee-jerk reaction, not action, but reaction. And that it's automatic. And again, it's going back a couple of centuries to a time in which that's just kind of the way it was. And I have to wonder too, in this regard, because I think that this is important to consider. There is a lot of the blame game that's going on around the world about the way things are today. And something tells me that based upon what you have just shared with us, there should not be the blame game going on. This is just the way that it has developed over the last 2 centuries. Short and simple. There's nobody's to blame. It's just the way that it is. And there was a different way of thinking prior to 2 centuries ago, and 4 and 6 and 8 and 10 and 20 and 30 and 40, however far back you want to go. So that process of, shall we call it, thought transformation, again, in the context of your, quantum think, that process has been evolving over the millennia, over humankind's existence. And that's all that's happening now, is that we're evolving to the next level. This is not a blame game, right?
Absolutely. I'm writing a new short book. Hopefully it'll be out before the end of the year. And to make it, everyone said, can you write a short book? Okay. But anyway, and I said, this blame and shame. But when you think about it, and this is the difference between, you're saying 2 centuries, so we're talking about what's also known as scientific materialism.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this science evolved where, let's say, we came out of an agrarian culture as a humanity, and we, started to innovate with all kinds of new technologies and machinery, right? And what would make life easier and bring us into what we call the industrial age. So what happened, though, I think, is we got oriented around the physical dimension of life. So even though in the background we were spiritual, we understood the sense of the sacred, maybe we understood energy. I don't think so much of that, to tell you the truth. And we forgot that that physical material aspect of life is only one of many, a multi-dimensional reality. So what is that? How did that affect the way we think? Well, let's take the very first distinction in quantum think, which is called holistic and holographic. Now, everyone loves to go around saying, we are one. The world is one. And yet, because of that physical reality dimension that we've been oriented around, really focused in it, otherwise black, white, red, purple, whatever, all these differences, material differences, and not being in the awareness of the actual unity of all of us, of all of nature, of all of life, of all of the greater cosmos, which now the Webb telescope is showing images of billions, millions and billions of stars and millions of galaxies that, again, unfathomable. So when you bring it back, and here we are on Earth, so we're living in a concept, a mental construct of oneness. And yet what we need to be able to do to go beyond the blame and shame and the very distressing divisiveness that is persisting in our culture right now, to be able to go beyond it is to actually be an experience of the oneness. And part of it can come from just understanding. Now, I heard one of you and your guest talking the other day, and we've all heard a lot of people talking about, I had a spiritual awakening, whether it was a very good guest you had, Marty, I forget what key. Anyway, I enjoyed it. But the point is that people have something happen to them, like distress. I call it crisis awakening, where what if we could use our intent for conscious awakening, then we wouldn't have to have the crisis awakening. But the point is, throughout the ages, from the beginning of whatever is, the memory of humankind, where the people who had reached these higher states of consciousness, we call masters or self-realized beings, that they have all admonished us, wake up, wake up. What are we waking up from? That mechanical conceptual consciousness. And so you can have a spiritual, and I was thinking when I was listening to that show with you and Marty, I thought, well, it's pretty interesting. People always say, well, I had a spiritual awakening and it changed my life. I took a whole new direction. Well, if we know that what is a spiritual awakening? If we know that spiritual connection to self with a capital S, to all that is, to the unbounded, all-encompassing, infinite intelligence and awareness, of which we get to be, right, each of us a focal point of. If you already know, and I'm very logical as well as metaphysical, if you already know that that's what it is, well, then shouldn't we be teaching our children? Shouldn't we be learning at a young age to awaken that spiritual connection within ourselves and to be able to relate to it in every aspect of life? And then what would that make possible in life? There wouldn't be, what would happen is the blame and shame. Once you are in that experience of that spiritual awakening, you are in that experience of oneness,
Mm.
so I'm sure you've had it too. And then what happens? The blame and shame, it's not an issue. It's like you talk about transcendental, right?
Mhm.
Meditation or a transcendent experience, then that aspect of reality goes back into the ethers where it's no longer actualized.
Mm.
That's how I see it. How do you see it, Richard?
Well, I'll share that with you as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story with Dianne Collins. And her book is, of course, Do You Quantum Think? Stay with us right here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and Dianne Collins is my guest. This is her fifth appearance here on this program, and I always enjoy having visits by guests we've had on before to continue the conversation. To answer your question from a moment ago, my observation, and I always put it this way because I never want to put onto anyone else what I have concluded. I would hope they would consider it, but I'm not making this a hard and fast rule. And here's a kind of an ironic statement. There are those who claim that there are no absolute truths, except for one small problem. The statement that there are no absolute truths is an absolute truth. Ergo, there's at least one. And it's a paradox. But, I also heard this from a protagonist in a movie that said, there is no reality. There is only perception. And I think that's probably absolutely true. As a child, I used to think that I was the proverbial little creature inside the head of the alien that you saw in Men in Black when they had that alien, the huge alien on that big table, and they popped open the head, and there was this tiny little guy in there, and he was operating the whole thing. And I used to look at myself as that tiny little guy looking out through the eyes and listening through the ears and so forth, and that the universe was here for me. But then I also concluded that everybody else is exactly the same. Each one of those bodies has a tiny little individual, an essence, if you will, inside the head that's seeing and hearing and so forth. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you about in regards to...
Can I just make a comment about that before
sure, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Because a lot of people use that perception, and I think the way that you said it, there is no from the movie, I guess, there is no reality. It means there's no fixed and static reality, and
correct.
That is a quantum principle. That is a quantum perspective, because everything is energy in flux, informed by intelligence and conscious. So it's always shifting and changing. So there's no static, this is the way it is. Right. Even though perceptually we do perceive reality that way, otherwise the physical realm is very important too, that we wouldn't be able to live or survive or relate. So, and there's all these aspects of looking at the world as a hologram. But to just take that, it doesn't mean that things aren't real. It means it's not fixed. And the other aspect of it is I like to make a slight nuanced distinction.
Okay.
It's not so slight, because perception has to do with the physical, what we usually think of as our ordinary physical five senses, taste, touch, smell, hearing, sight. And I think that in the quantum way of saying it, it's called the observer effect. In the quantum think system, it's what I consider the most important distinction. And it's distinction number 2. Distinction number 1 being you have to see the whole thing, how it all interrelates.
Right.
But distinction number 2 I call observer created reality, which is in essence what you're saying. but a little bit different. And it's so interesting when you say, well, there's all these other little people inside looking out. But observer created reality, let me say what that is that there's no fixed way that reality is, that, well, then what's showing up, what's manifesting. And the observer effect means what we bring to our reality, what we hold in consciousness, the conclusions, the assumptions, our, whatever way our worldviews, values, what we bring to that observation of any situation, whether it's the world situation, the government, someone close to us in our lives, anything, that what we bring, I say it very simply, what we bring is what we get. And that gives us 100% power, actually, and responsibility for our experience, because it's not like you can change the circumstances that are, a lot of circumstances we're not in control of.
It's kind of like the weather.
However, we are 100% in command, can be, when you're conscious enough to see this, consciously aware, I should say. We're all conscious. When you're in command of your relationship to those circumstances. And that is where our power lies. So when you say observer created reality, that especially in the domains that are not the manifest hard, frozen light that Einstein said, fixed reality that we think of, like the table I'm sitting at or something like that. But in a most important realm, the relational realm, and also you could say in the emotional realm, because our thoughts give rise, the meanings that we give to our thoughts give rise to our emotional state response. And if you're not having a good experience, what this observer created reality means is we can actually shift it. How do we do that? First, you realize it's not fixed and absolute, just like you said, that, and in fact, the spiritual wisdom and the science agrees on that, but you don't need a science or a spiritual master to tell you. You can do that yourself. And you can see it with little kids, right? 1 minute they're crying, the next second they're like, hi, let's go, play. So we can actually shift our experience in an instant, an instantaneous transformation in the non-physical realms. And that is in the realm of thought, in the realm of emotion, and in the area, in the domain of relationship. So this is where, we started out the conversation, where do we have access to creating what we want? If you're having an experience that is not giving you or others the great, wonderful experience of life that we're here to have, then you can shift it by learning how to use these faculties of mind. In that case, how do you shift it? 1-2 approach. 1, you realize it's not the truth. Just because you have a thought, you don't have to identify with it. You don't have to own it. We know that we are the greater awareness, aware of the thought. But when you have it, what do? You create a new intent. What do I want to experience now? How can I, everybody says, don't judge, judge not lest you be judged or whatever. We want to live the highest virtues. This is our access to doing it. You realize you're still going to have those judgments, but you don't have to remain with it.
We're talking with Dianne Collins, and we're talking about some very fascinating things, and I want to dive into another area as we continue here with Dianne Collins, DianneCollins.com, and Do You Quantum Think, the title of the book here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and Dianne, I want to ask you to, I don't know if this is going off on a sidebar or if this is related, but it came to me in terms of waking up and the phrase, that we are wanting to awaken to a higher consciousness. Can you help us? Because I have to say, I'm just in my own ego and personality, I'm really annoyed by the conversations over the word woke. I don't know even what the hell that means. Okay. But from your perspective, help us to not only define from your perspective the difference between being woke as a pejorative term by some people versus awakening to this 21st century form of thinking.
Well, this is a most important topic. And I started laughing, Richard, because my family was over the other day. I was hosting a birthday party for my brother and my sister. As soon as you bring up, well, our family is split politically.
Mm-hmm.
I like to call myself the transcendent party because the parties really don't matter. And see, that's part of the automaticity where that we need to awaken from. But to get to this word woke, and I've looked into it, I like to research, and I realize that it has become an aberration. I think of the origination of it. Woke, I think, was, if I've researched correctly, was originally for the purpose of just being awake to, in particular, I think, African, the Black race not being not being treated properly. I want to say it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the lack of, and it was just to be awake to the fact that every single one of us are oneness, right? In
Mm-hmm.
diversity and the oneness. Everybody wants everyone to have rights, right? Of dignity, to be dignified, to be treated properly. And again, this is where but what happened is, I feel it got distorted, like we're in a Frankenstein version of it, right? Where it's like a monster in our society now.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because we don't want everyone to be respected and to be treated with dignity that every human being deserves. It has nothing to do with that. And it transcends race, creed, whatever, gender, but that this wokeness became like a tribal, I don't know how else, I don't even like that word, but I'll use it here. Like being identified with, going back to what you were saying about, it's the blame and shame, like every little thing, you say a word and somebody's going to be offended. And if you understood the nature of the observer effect, right? Or you call it perception. I know what you mean, but I wanted to take it to another dimension of it.
Sure.
The observer effect, what you bring is what you get. Do we have to take offense at every single thing? I mean, the comedians, our culture is being, it's being attacked by, when I say our culture, our creative arts, okay? People want to rewrite the books. They don't want, you can't say this, rewrite the song, Baby, It's Cold Outside. I think we talked about that on
we did,
shows. And and it's everything. You can't laugh at yourself. You can't say certain words. We're not allowed to use these universities who are coming out with these lists of words that you can't use because it might offend something or someone. Now, to me, this is a Frankenstein monster.
Yeah.
This is not what I feel in my understanding. The original wokeness was just to be aware of how you're treating people. So the people who are on this woke, Frankenstein bandwagon, how are they treating people? And this is where the awakening, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I was once one of my unpublished blogs, as I call it, Why Woke is Not Awakened. It's exactly what you brought up, Richard. It's like, that is not an awakened state. Because if we're attacking anyone, if we cannot appreciate the creativity that however we have utilized language, as long as we're not intentionally hurting someone. And I think that is probably a very important aspect of it. Is it intentional when we say the word woman, or I forget some of the word, it's so ridiculous. But are we trying to hurt someone?
Yeah.
Or do we have to say, birthing person instead of the word woman? All these things, to me, they don't make sense. And I think that this is a way of what I would call a crisis awakening that's going on in our world on Earth right now. Because we are in a time of what has been called the Great Shift. We are, I look through many lenses, astrology being one of them. We are in the time of the age of Aquarius, a time when the brotherhood, sisterhood of humanity comes together in unity with awareness, serving humanity. That's the symbol, the water bearer. And water represents consciousness. So it's that, and we each bring, it's another aspect of Aquarius, the symbology of it in astrology, it's the higher mind, it's the higher consciousness. And it's also the uniqueness, the genius that is unique within each one of us. So how I say it, it's paradoxical, but it's for the time for each of us to bring our unique individuality, the God-given gifts, talents, traits, proclivities that we've been born with, and bring them together to the community of humanity. Mm. Now, for that to happen, we cannot be lost in this aberrant wokeness. Mm-hmm. How do you see it?
Yeah, there is a certain element of, as you've described it accurately, I believe, there's a certain element of victimhood in quote unquote wokeness, but not so much on the person who is woke, but on the person who is maybe listening to, like I say, a comedian who someone's listening to this comedian who says this, that, and the other thing. I mean, I went back. I mean, I love going on YouTube and because I like, my wife likes watching a lot of these dramas and so forth before we go to sleep. Well, I then put my earbud in my ear and I go to YouTube and I listen to the comedians. Some of the current ones. Yeah, some of the current ones. But I've even gone back to some of the comedians going back to the 80s. Like even Eddie Murphy and the movies that he came out. And I'm listening to some of this stuff going, wow, he'd never get away with that today. But that was the era in which we were at that time.
Exactly. So, what's wrong with it? There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I heard you saying about you and your wife. We have a similar thing. My husband watches all these police shows and things that I don't want in my consciousness before I go to bed. And I do the same thing. I'm a big YouTube,
Yeah. Yeah.
going all over, listening to a lot of the comedy. And I'm working on developing a TV comedy series. So I'm very aware of what you're talking about. And I go back and listen, Seinfeld, one of the most successful comedy series of all time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Classic, still on. And people say, oh, these producers I was working with, they go, oh, that could never be, produced today. And I think that's a sad situation.
Yeah. It
And
really is. It
right?
really is. Yeah. Well, and there are a lot of programs like that. We're talking with Dianne Collins. Her book is Do You Quantum Think? DianneCollins.com, which of course we will be linked to, as with the other previous interviews we have had with Dianne here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it is always a wonderful time of a conversation with Dianne when we have her on the program. One of the other elements that I think is something we want to talk about now, and that is you have actually written a song. And of course, I can relate. I don't know how. I mean, this particular piece of music is 9 minutes long as far as the recording is concerned. I've got the lyrics in front of me, and it's called We're in a New World. Now, I would think, by the way, I love also known as QT Diva. That's just as cute as ever can be. But REM.
I have to have an artist name, right?
I like it. I like it. But REM really did say it best prior to this piece that you put together, and that is, it's the end of the world as we know it. And the reality, forgive me for putting it in this context, but the reality is every moment is the end of the world as we know it, because we can't go back. And I myself, I can't go back. It's been a year since my eldest sister passed away. It's not even been a month since my father has passed away. I can't go back. That world where I grew up as a child, it's gone. That world doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. I can't go back. And even 10 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago, half a second ago, I can't go back. And you talk about how we are in a new world. The lyrics along these lines here, we're in a new world. You've got to think in a new way. You've got to think in sync or get driven to drink. Do it for yourself. Do it for us. Take a quantum leap in consciousness to a fully dimensional reality and the more accurate view of knowledge at the edge today. You've got to expand. Your thinking is bland. It should be banned. Women, children, or men. You're not in command. You think free, but between you and me, your think is shaped by the 17th century, which is what we talked about at the front end of this program.
Exactly.
And there is some now, I begin to truly understand more when I've had guests on, when I say, hey, we have choices and knowledge of those choices. And they say, no, not really. Because we haven't awakened to the reality that our thoughts are mired in the thinking, the processing, the problem solving of the 17th century or the 18th or whatever century you want in the past. You have 21 different, I believe it's 21, by the way, let me just say, blackjack, I win. You have 21 different elements within your book. Do you quantum think? Can you go? I don't know if they're put together in a specific order in the book, but can you get us started on this process to be able to answer that question? Yes, I am beginning to quantum think. I really want to make that shift. How can we start?
Okay. I did, by the way, there are 21. I call it 21 plus one because the 22, chapter 22, is called Living Fully Dimensionally. But so I call it 21 plus one. It's probably some numerological thing. But, I just want to say something about that song, and we'll go into that song. And this is an aspect of it, because I keep talking about the faculties of mind, which I distinguish 5. And it's really faculties of consciousness: intent, which creates; intuition, which connects to the non-local mind field of, we can go anywhere there. We're not going, we're actually connecting. Subtle energy, which we feel, and we are transformers of energy. So we can always transmute our energy to a higher state. When my husband says, "Oh, I go, well, up your frequency, bring your frequency up," because we have the capability of doing that with our intent. These 5 faculties work together. So subtle energy, resonance, which we know everything is resonance, and about sound, and the effect of sound actually brings things into form. Okay, so this is known in sacred geometry. It's known in sound healing. It. And I think I mentioned in my book, I had all these little mentions, not going into it, that NASA scientists were trying to figure out how to use sound to build things, in space, instead of building them here and then transporting it, and using sound. Anyway, and the 5th faculty being meditation, which I consider an aspect of mind, of consciousness, not only a practice. We do the practice of meditation, whatever form you have of it that you like to practice, but it's because we can live, we are in a meditative state. So when someone says, "Oh, go and be still and go within," well, where are we going? We're just connecting to that meditative state, to that meditative faculty of our consciousness. And we have that available to us in any second. And, I like what you were saying, Richard, because it's true. Something left, but I want to get to that, because there's another point of it about things going in and out of existence. So looking at, how do we quantum think? We're doing it because and I'm trying to think of what would be, well, I can say, okay, I'll give one distinction, but that will get us out of it. But I wanted to tell you something about my song as it relates to these faculties of mind, because it's like, where does genius come from, right? We hear all these stories. I was listening to Ray Kurzweil the other day in a program that Al and I attend every year, Abundance 360. It's mind-blowing about all the new technologies, and we learn a lot there. And anyway, Ray Kurzweil is one of the people who thinks brain BCI, they call it brain computer interface. It's coming sooner than later. He's a futurist. He's a great inventor. I think he invented something to do with sound. I think Dolby sound. Anyway, he's a true genius, and whether you agree with him or not. And why did I bring him up? I lost my train of thought there. I went on a tangent, but what was I saying about? I don't know. That completely left. Okay, it'll come back. But anyway, the point being that we are here. Oh, I know what I was talking about, the art of distinguishing, which is one of the quantum think distinctions, number 15, I think. And what is it? It's the method. So the I know why I brought up about Ray Kurzweil, because I was thinking this morning, there's a difference between thinking and information processing. So when they talk about artificial intelligence, and now it's AGI, artificial generative or general intelligence, where they say, well, are the computers getting smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And are they going to overtake us? There are all the movies on it. And people are actually talking about it now. And that's the fear. And this is going on. It's a part of a conversation. If you're tuning into that aspect of society, I expect you have been tuned into it a little bit. And what I thought of this morning is that there's a different, maybe the machine, like the brain, okay, the machine meaning the computer, which is, becoming amazing even before quantum computing. Okay, just in classical computing, they say, is that we have all the information available to us. We're already connected to it because we're always with this. Okay. Yep. And so that's outside the body, whether you want it inside. I don't like the idea of it, but if you make a distinction, and this is the art of distinguishing, how do you learn anything? Is you bring it into your awareness. This is a quantum think distinction. The art of distinguishing, a new worldview of learning. You bring something into your awareness in the present moment, right now, in such a way that it alters your relationship to it. It transforms your experience. So when we talk about something and you hear about something, it could be something you already knew about, but you're experiencing it in a new way. This is how we learn. And that's because we learn through experience, right? You can talk about pasta, see pictures of it, talk about all the different recipes for it, but until you taste it, it's not in your experiential knowing. So this is the art of distinguishing, is that you can give yourself experiences of awareness. It's not only tangible, things like pasta, experiences of awareness that transform our state. And that's what quantum thinking is. So when you're reading or listening to the distinctions, I have a video program, an audio program. I have an audio book, which is how I got into the studio to do my song. But when and this is not just quantum thinking, but quantum thinking is distinguishing a new way of learning, because if the computers have all the information, they are already ahead of us in terms of information processing. I'm sure many people have heard of Chat GPT is the latest craze. It's the fastest growing app in history, Chat GPT, where you can be in a conversation with an artificial intelligence, like bringing it, I say, from just companies using artificial intelligence to the ordinary person using artificial intelligence. It's considered now to be the biggest game changer since the internet became a household thing.
Wow.
So it's something that we should know about. But when you look at what's the difference, is the computer going to take us over as human beings? No. Why? Because it's processing information. It can process, you ask ChatGPT a question, it comes up in like a nanosecond, like a whole thing. Whatever you ask it about. I guess you haven't tried it yet, but you should.
No, I have not.
It's called OpenAI. I forget the rest. It might be anyway. Anyone does a search on OpenAI, ChatGPT, and it's free right now, or they have a free version, and you can use it, and it's just astounding. And people are using it in business. People are scared of it in schools because kids are using it to write their essays, and of course that is not good. So you're not right. I mean, it's a big thing. But my point being, to make a distinction between thinking as a creative act, as a connection to divine source, as thinking, creating from nothing, whereas all the artificial intelligence is actually creating from something. It's creating from data that is already there, and it may come up with new variations on the theme. And that's why I feel it's not going to have the heart, soul. They're trying to say that they'll be sentient, the combination of robotics and artificial intelligence, and that's the future, and it's going to change our whole society, which I'm sure that it will in the outer world. But what I want everyone to know is that within us, as aspects of divine consciousness, that if we commit ourselves, have an intent to be the masterful beings that I believe, I don't want to say it's a belief, I know we are here, especially in this era, in this time of this great shift of, as REM and other people and the Hopis have said, the end of, right?
It's the end of the world as we know it, right?
As we know it, the Mayans that people are familiar with, but a lot of the indigenous cultures, the end of the world as we know it, because we are evolving. And so what we need to know is that, and Ray Kurzweil, who's, top of the, chain on this topic about artificial intelligence, he says, it's not that it takes you over. It's that you learn how to use it. So for me, quantum thinking is learning, I'm not in the technology business, but I keep myself aware of it. Quantum thinking is having an intent to be a self-realized, masterful being, to learn the faculties of consciousness, the faculties of mind that we've been endowed with, how to use it, and to use it in the highest way possible for the best vision for ourselves and the earth and everyone. We could say the cosmos, that's another show, right? But we right, but to know that we are here to be those great beings, right? Everyone said it. Jesus said it, Buddha said it, Krishna, that you can do what I do and beyond. This is what the masters have taught us. I have a chapter in part 1 of Quantum Think called Mastery, where I discuss all these topics: mastery, mind, wisdom. And then the second half is the actual system of principles. But when you look at what's going on in the world right now, it's very important for each one of us to stay connected to that aspect of ourselves, our higher states. And so I don't know, you can't really explain, where do we start, was their question, with quantum thinking. And I've given you a few of the distinctions: observer, creator, reality. But this is really what it's about. It's about having an intent to live in the expanded state, because, people meditate. We know it changes our brain, it changes our state, it changes our behaviors, it changes our health. What I am putting forth is that we can live simultaneously in the meditative state, that is that state of awareness, and at the same time living our worldly, the ego that we love. I say, love your ego, love yourself, capital S. Really, I mean, we're here, we have an ego identity.
Yeah.
But it's to be playful.
Yeah.
It's why do we look at the comedies and the movies? Because it's play. It's the play of consciousness. It's called in, Eastern philosophies.
Yeah.
And that's it. So it's like, what if you could live, which you can, I'm saying, in a meditative state, and at the same time be enjoying fully, richly, all the different aspects of the identity that you came here to develop in your SOU sole purpose in this incarnation.
Extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. Dianne Collins is my guest. I'm Richard Dugan. This is Tell Me Your Story. I am so happy that Dianne Collins has joined us here on the program. DianneCollins.com is the website. Do you quantum think? I hope so, that you've learned something here on the program, and get a copy, if you will, through Barnes & Noble. Go through her website as well and pick up a copy. There are a lot of other things that she is doing as well. And you mentioned earlier that you're working on another smaller book. It made me immediately think of, I believe his name was Marshall McLuhan. Stan Freberg did a satire of him, Marshall McMedium. I am the studio, and the studio is me, and that kind of thing, you know. And,
I love it.
And the conversation was, yes, I understand you wrote a book. Yes, I did. And can you explain it? Well, and he went into this long dissertation, and he comes out and says, and I'm working on a supplement to the original book. It's an explanation of the book. And then I'm working on an explanation of an explanation. I just wish people would get it. And it's really a very funny thing. One of the other aspects of our existence, and you just talked about this in terms of one of the elements, one of the parts that is integral, but also inseparable. And that is our ego. When we have different parts of our body, and I learned in psychology, you've got the id, the ego, the superego, those kinds of things. I wish I had done better in psychology in college, but well. Anyway, that was a long time ago.
I think you're a little bit beyond it right now.
I hope.
You're at an even more expanded state.
Well, that's again, that was in a galaxy far, far away. But one of the things that I have been grappling with that and I love talking about the subject. In spite of the fact that I've now experienced it twice in my lifetime of close family members, death and dying. I've always enjoyed the conversations because I've always been curious, and I've talked with people who've had near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences and so forth and so on. And I'm always curious as to what are they experiencing now? What are they doing? And I actually had the opportunity to actually experience that, not because I had an out-of-the-body experience, but because I went through a hypnosis program called Life Between Lives. Dr. Newton is his name, who initially did all of the case studies. I've read 3 of his books in regards to the case studies. And the therapist, the practitioner here in Santa Barbara, took me back to my previous life before this one, and to that death, which actually was quite pleasant. I mean, it was not traumatic, and then to the experience after I left that body and so forth. And it was really fascinating. And then, of course, coming into this existence. But I think about what we take with us. And we've been talking about consciousness. We've been talking about waking up, being awake, not woke, but awake. Okay. And in spite of a few periods of time of sadness and sorrow and great tears, for the most part, I can say, well, my father was here in this body over here in Phoenix. Now he's everywhere. And I talk to him a lot now. I really do. It's not so much expecting an answer. It's more just kind of saying, hey, this is this, and that is that, and that there's the other. And I remember putting this query out about how sometimes when we ask questions, sometimes the answers come, but sometimes the answer is in the question. And then there was a third option that just kind of came to me in the middle of an interview when we were talking, and it was, do you understand how irrelevant that question is? There's nothing wrong with the question. It's irrelevant to the grand scheme of things or the big picture. And one of the elements that we talk about on this program, Dianne, is, of course, we're looking for those new ways of living because the old ways don't work. Just look around us. It's obvious, and it's time to move forward. And Einstein, I believe it was Einstein who said, you cannot solve or deal with the challenges of today with the consciousness that created them. You've got to raise your consciousness. So when it comes to this aspect of leaving the body, that little creature that decides, pop the head open, leave, and away you go. We are immortal, or at least that little thing there that resides is immortal. And that the body of my sister and my father were mortal, and they were returned to ashes to ashes and dust to dust. And it isn't just one philosophy, but all these philosophies that say that, and even science has verified, that everything is energy, even the ashes and the dust. It's all energy. That's like you mentioned earlier about the table, Yeah, it may seem solid. That may be the perception, but the reality is it's energy. And energy, it has been said, cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed. Does that apply to thinking? And you made, I think, a real great distinction that I hadn't thought of before between processing of information and thinking, because processing of information isn't thinking.
Exactly. Okay, there was a lot in there.
I know.
I wanted to talk about, this. I want to say something about, the transition. People often talk about death that way, right? Oh, he made his transition. And it's like, there are these questions that I've had, I'm sure people have, what's the difference between the soul and the spirit and obviously the body? But right, the body is like our personal spacesuit for each incarnation. But I always think of it as the soul is sort of like a messenger of the divine that evolves, that is like a higher state. I call it the esoteric dimension, that soul evolution. And the spirit comes from the identity that incarnates. So I think, well, how is this mediumship going on, right? How are we talking? By the way, I do talk to my dad, who's made his transition, and a few other people too. They come through. You can actually, if you wanted to, it's not weird, but you can actually connect to anyone. But
Yep, absolutely.
And I do get actual responses. One time, a friend of my husband's who had passed on, and I didn't really know him. I met him once. We were sitting down for dinner at a restaurant, and all of a sudden he had all these messages for Alan. It came through me. If you're, feel safe to let it through you. But I've had mentors. One of my great mentor on the other side, every time I talk about, so getting back to the distinction, spirit, soul, body, that the spirit, you're always in touch with that spirit. And you're right? The energy never dies, it gets transformed. But let's just think of the identity. What is this mediumship? And I think it's that when the body is shed, that the spirit doesn't die either. Okay, so let's say if you go into a past life regression, and I happened to meet personally, because he lived here and other reasons, Dr. Brian Weiss, who was a person, I don't know if you know who he is, who wrote the book Many Lives, Many Masters. And he was a psychiatrist in Miami Beach, the head of psychiatry there in a hospital. And he was an old worldview, strict materialist scientist. This happened to him years ago, and he was regressing one of his patients. And she was coming up with all these things, past lives, and she could speak in languages that she didn't know in this particular incarnation. And he didn't know what to make of it. He was ruling out multiple personality, etc. But what happened is that in between her incarnation talk, messages came through for him. And that's why it's called Many Lives, Many Masters. And they told him things that no one else, he's never told anyone in the world. And some entity, of intelligence knew him and to convince him. Anyway, he's now famous for that. And it's such a great book. And especially for people who have had their loved ones make that transition, it really is so helpful, because you get a deep understanding of that each soul incarnates with a particular purpose and how long or how short their life will be. And it's just really, really helpful to people who are in the sadness about it. But anyway, my mentor, who was a psychic astrologer, actually, she introduced me to Brian Weiss, who used to say to me, it's a thin veil. And in the people who study such things now of the energies, we're getting higher frequency energies from our own sun, apparently. I'm just repeating what I've heard, and I actually feel it, but we can feel there is an awakening going on, despite all the tragic events in the world that we see every day. And so it's simultaneous. But what she was saying about, so they say now that the veil is getting thinner. And that's why it's easier for us now to actually connect with those who have left the body. And I think that's a good thing. And I think that, you're asking, I think we're given these experiences so that we can, you have the wisdom, Richard, to be able to inquire into this whole phenomenon of death, which some people, that's their profession in life here, but to be able to have it be a more conscious conversation so that people aren't afraid of it. And so that people understand. And again, that there is multidimensionality. It's not just, many people think there is, like, you have this body, this one time, and you're out of here. Now, in the physical dimension, that's true, right? Or even in the dimension of spirit, where that's the end. However, the soul, then I think that is the true awakening. It's the awakening of the soul, that when that happens, you realize there is more than this. And personally, I've had some experiences of past lives also. So it's something that it's not even a question. I know it to be true. And I went to hear Jim Tucker at the Edgar Cayce Institute several years ago. And, he gives they have a lot of data and the scientific studies of reincarnation. So to me, it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's true. Okay, so, and who knows, because it's all a mystery anyway. But let's say that in going to a more expanded consciousness, I think it can help us as a humanity deal more effectively. When I say effectively, get, be more at ease. Not that you're going to be comfortable with death of a loved one, but to just be able to embrace it and know that that spirit never goes completely. I mean, I've asked my dad, and one time I was on a show, just saying that I was on the radio show, I've been on hundreds of shows, but with a medium from New York years ago. And it was a year that we used to be part owners in a thoroughbred racehorse who I felt a real soul connection. with. Mambo Meister is his name, and he was he was a champion horse, and he had to be put down. He broke his leg in a workout, and it was like so sad. I cried my eyes out. Anyway, and I asked her, "Well, do you ever connect with animals?" And she said, "Oh yeah." Anyway, Mambo Meister came in and gave me information about a piece of jewelry that I had on my cosmetic dressing table that, oh, this woman didn't know about it. And anyway, it came through, and it's not mind reading. It's something else. So we do have connection to, if we want it, because sometimes you don't want it, right? And like people are afraid of it. Like, no, don't come near me. And you can block it or you can let it in. And I was going to tell you, my dad, sometimes when I talk to him, he's hovering. I say, well, where are you? He said, well, first he rested. It's paradoxical. And to people who are not attuned to this, you could sound, it sounds a little bit weird, but it's not weird. And he said to me, well, he actually moved on. His soul had to move on. But the spirit of that person who was my dad in this physical, dimension of reality, that's still, I don't know where it exists, as you say. Now, your dad and your sister are everywhere, right? We have the limit when we're in the physical body, but you can actually expand and connect. And I think, well, do you find it comforting to be able to do that, or how do you feel about it?
Oh yeah. Oh, very much so. And I get these impressions every so often from him. Matter of fact, shortly after I had received the phone call in regards to my sister a year ago, I started hearing her voice saying, "Hey, Richard, everything's okay. Everything's okay." And there were some things that were shared after the fact in terms of the fact that my sister was not afraid of the hard questions, which I already knew because 2 months earlier, I had a phone conversation with her, and I asked her one of those hard questions, "Are you ready?" And she gave me that typical answer, yes and no. She didn't want to leave her husband behind, having to deal with all the stuff. But she says, "No, I'm not afraid. I'm ready. I am ready to go." Now, I can say for myself, so am I. I'm ready. If today were my day, I'm good to go. Do I want to? No, there's still a lot I want to do, but I don't have any control over that. Only the universe knows what the expiration date on my ticket is, my departure date. I have the arrival date, got that down pat, but it's the departure that I don't know about. And I'm hoping that it's a good 40 plus years down the road. But yeah, I do take some comfort in that. Even my wife, who has lost all of her brothers and sisters and parents, she's the last remaining member of the family. She spends a lot of time by herself because she isn't working right now. And she says that she feels them around her. And I says, then you need to connect with them. You need to talk with them. You need to let them remind you that you are not alone. And I think that a lot of people, they kind of poo-poo this whole thing because they're trapped in either their fear and or their grief. And there's nothing wrong with either of those, but you don't want to get trapped. And I know that and this sounds, even coming out of my mouth into my ears, sounds kind of weird, but I haven't been the same since my father's passing. More so, I suppose I rebounded a little faster with my sister. But But I just, it's like, I trying to find that spark again. I'm trying to find that ignition point. And it's not that, I still love doing these interviews. I still look forward to having these conversations. Matter of fact, when I left for work this morning and I get here and I set everything up and I look at my calendar going, okay, I should have an 8:30 interview. Oh, I don't have an interview. Oh, okay. I was a little disappointed. But I was glad that you and I were going to chat this today, and very grateful for that. We are talking with Dianne Collins, and DianneCollins.com is the website, and the book is entitled Do You Quantum Think? We hope you'll get a copy of that. Go to her website. We will be linked to it as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, Dianne Collins, my guest, and I want to thank you so much for being a part of this program for the 5th time, and I know that this won't be the last time because you've got this other supplemental thing coming up. But you also, of course, have this beautiful song. It's very, very cool. Quantum science is providing what ancient wisdom preaches. Start living as one being, not what your outer eye teaches. There may be distinctions, but no real separation. And we have been imbued with the power of creation. And I love how you end this particular song, which is, it's a rather long song, but it's a good one. Do it. Do it for yourself. Do it for us. Take a quantum leap in consciousness. And when you quantum think, you wake up in consciousness. Repeating this, when you quantum leap, you wake up in consciousness. You and I, we're awake. 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 Yes, we are. We're not woke. Distinction. We are not woke. We are awake. And we continue to wake more as we begin these processes, whether it's using the 21 plus 1 techniques and steps that Dianne has elucidated in her book, Do You Quantum Think, or whatever you choose to use. I have to say, Dianne, that one of my favorite books, which is my metaphysical primer, Autobiography of a Yogi. It's got some great stories in there that elucidate much of what you talk about in your book. And so we encourage people to get a copy of your book as well. And I thank you so much for being a part of what we're doing here.
Oh, it is such a joy, such a pleasure. The time flies, right? Can I just say something to you before we go? I don't know how much time we have.
Plenty.
Okay, about you and your dad. And thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here in these conversations with you. I think that consider, and I like that word too. And, we have so much in common. The Autobiography of a Yogi, that shifted my life when I was, I don't know, young. Okay. Luckily, I read it at a young age. But anyway, Yogananda, in case anyone wants to know. So I think maybe consider allowing yourself the grieving process. That when you say you haven't been yourself, when you lose someone who you're close to, who you love, who was, gave you life in a sense. There's grieving. And I never realized until an uncle I was very close to, I didn't realize that there was a distinction between sadness and grieving. And I think maybe that's okay. And I think that grieving, from what I've seen of other people and myself, where you realize it was the person's time to go. For my dad was 94. I was happy for him because at the end he was suffering a little bit with illness. And, once it came a struggle for him to get through the day, it was like, okay, Dad, time to go. He agrees. But I think, so I wasn't sad, but there's a missing, I was going to say, one day I had like kind of almost a pain in my heart. And what was this? And I realized that was grief. And that it's a different kind of emotion. And in a way, it's an emotion where that raises your consciousness, that lifts us. Because it's so far beyond, let's say the superficialities of life that we live in as a way of life that we enjoy. I'm not putting it down, but it takes you out of that and you're in a different state. And I feel like that's what you're experiencing, and that, just kind of recommending to you, not telling you what to do, but I only save that for my husband. He's like, will you stop telling me what to do? I say, no, God gave me the job and I'm going to live up to it.
There you go.
But I think that just allowing yourself, and I think you're coming to so many awarenesses through it. It's like a gift.
Yeah.
That he's given you.
And I have to say too that as I have shared on numerous occasions, even on this program, that my father, and he shared this with me when he was alive, he said that he gives my mother all of the credit for our upbringing. And it's like, are you kidding? And at the memorial, myself and my three remaining sisters and my brother, all of our remarks could be summed up in basically one phrase: we would not be the people we are if it hadn't been for you. Taking nothing away from my mother, the focus is on his memorial, and that I hope he knows now that he had a very big impact on the lives of his children, whether he thought so in this world or not. And I'm grateful for the lessons that he taught me and the things that he taught me. It's been a beautiful life, and it's not over, at least not yet for me. So I want to continue his legacy, if you will, by continuing these programs, because I know that he was very frustrated in the last 10 or 12 or more years of his life because of what he saw happening in the world and in this country, and so forth and so on. And I used to say that my dad passed at 91. I'm 60. I'll be 63 in June. And I would say to people, I said, my dad is 70 or 80 or 85 or whatever. He's been around 30 years longer than me. And I'm frustrated. So I can only imagine how frustrating my dad must be over the way things are, So, but we never got into those conversations about things because we both knew that what was the point, misery loves company. No, we're not gonna go there. We're gonna focus on all the good stuff. And that's really what we want to do.
And I think that's what, that's why your show is terrific, because this is what we're focused on. I think I like to say we stay in the cosmic perspective, which is that more expansive, wow, this is a time of transition.
Yeah.
And to get very technical about it from a quantum point of view, where it's, which is the worldview assumptions shaping your thinking, the scientific materialism or the quantum age. And of course, quantum think is we proactively shape our thinking according to the more expanded, up-to-date, more accurate view of reality brought to us by science and spirituality. But the point being is that the institutions, the societal structures of society and the institutions that we're living in now, that we see coming under scrutiny and looking all the different faultiness with it, and kind of seem to be crumbling.
Yeah.
That they were born with the thinking that, according to the assumptions of scientific materialism, the industrial age, aka. And so it makes sense. We're in a quantum age.
Yeah.
We actually are ready to restructure. And this is also an astrological thing from the past since 2008. Won't go into the astrology, but okay, Pluto and Capricorn, which just changed into Aquarius a few days ago for the next 20 years. But I won't go into it, but I'll mention it for everyone who likes astrology. That, which more people are because of the age of Aquarius, there's a bigger interest in it now. But everything esoteric, everything spiritual. But when you look at it and you say restructuring, it doesn't mean throwing out the established status quo. Restructuring means you look at, keep what's working, and this goes as a collective, societal, and also filters back to us as individuals. What in your life, when you look at it, and this is quantum thinking, is living consciously with awareness, being aware of what I call the energies of the time, referred to as, and these are the energies of the time. So you think, okay, restructuring. And we saw all the systems and structures, especially corporations, governments. That's what Capricorn rules since 2008. And so we don't just throw them out, like, let's not just throw out the US Constitution. No.
Right.
It's like, how can we reinterpret it, maybe? Do a little bit of restructuring. It's not because that's a document. It's a little bit different. Maybe it needs to be looked at newly, but you don't just like throw it out. Like, let's throw out capitalism and bring in socialism. That doesn't make sense. But when you're quantum thinking, you're thinking from a both and perspective. So even from, the economic, financial, which is very important, obviously, always important, and especially now because that's going through a big transition.
Yep.
And we really need to have both and view thinkers who can look at it from the whole and for the good of the whole, of everyone, and see what's going to work now. Is it a combination of cryptocurrencies and fiat currencies? This is one of the lenses I look through, spirituality, quantum think, astrology, financial, and technology. Those are my 5 major lenses. We all have them. And so, looking at that and saying, like, okay, let's get rid of this. Or, there are certain things that we don't need the isms. We need to be looking at what works now. And this is the importance of new thinking. And what I call, what you quoted from, paraphrased from Einstein, which I say in Do You Quantum Think? It's become a modern day mantra, not only because it makes sense, but because it's never been more relevant.
Yes.
Because the thing that we need to restructure, since it shapes everything else manifest that we live in, is our thinking. So if you can restructure your thinking, expand your awareness, go beyond the automatic, least action pathways of the culture of your individuality, whatever it is, you don't have to give up everything. That's not the point. It's a both and. But you look at, are these points of view that I've been attached to, are they still good for me? Are they still relevant? What do I need? What kind of thinking do I need to let go of? What can I embrace as I'm listening to Richard Dugan's Tell Me Your Story, where you have so many brilliant, great, expansive guests on, and with your hosting, and being able to really expand and extend the conversation and the consciousness of every one of us listening in this conversation, which goes beyond time. And that's the beauty of our technology too,
Yeah.
is that we're living in time and beyond time simultaneously. So it's like, what am I feeling drawn to? What am I resonating with? What, tool or practice, whether it's quantum think or whether it's any of the other things that you bring forth on your show, that if you feel drawn to it, right, allow yourself to open up to it, go forward with it, and remember that we're creating it all the time, our experience of life. That is the observer created reality. And so that's the good part.
Yeah. I've even heard it put this way. You don't want to destroy the old institutions. What you want to do is you want to create new ones that make the old ones obsolete.
Right.
So you're not wasting your time in destruction and construction. All you do is you work on construction and make sure that, again, it makes the old one obsolete, that is not working. And you can still incorporate elements that do work from the old model into the new. We're talking with Dianne Collins here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you so much for being with us. Dianne, I have those three questions that I've asked you 4 other times, but we're in our 15th year, so we've kind of changed the questions up just a little bit.
Oh, okay.
All right. But before I ask you those questions, I need to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday mornings at 1 a.m. Wednesdays at 9 a.m. That is our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We stream live at those times at richarddugan.com, and we're podcasting on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations on the internet. We are also on YouTube, where you can watch these interviews. I hope that you will select being notified so that every time I put up a new interview, you know that, there's another conversation. Let's go check that one out. I'm not so much concerned with the numbers. Hey, they're nice. I mean, we're at almost 94,000 listens after starting our podcasting in January of 2018. But YouTube, I think we're at 103 subscribers, and that's fine, because I know that there are a whole bunch. It's like 95% of the views on my YouTube channel are from non-subscribers. Only 5% are from my YouTube subscribers. That's fine. I have no problem with that whatsoever. So I thank you for listening and watching Tell Me Your Story online. We also ask that if you can support the work that we're doing financially, we have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And all you have to do when you go to PayPal is type in my email address, richard@richarddugan.com. That is to whom you will be sending that support. And we thank you for those who have helped and for those who will help. And also spend some time going within, listening to that still small voice, and just spending some time in that quiet, calm, peaceful place. Hey, our guest, Dianne Collins, mentioned meditation is one of those 5 pillars that she looks at, or lenses that she looks through, if you will. So we hope that you will do that. With all of that being said, we now go to those 3 questions. The first one is still the same, and it is, who is Dianne Collins?
Oh, no, really? Okay. I have now this cute way of saying it. A girl with a new point of view. And really, that's it. I mean, I don't really need to say anything about it. I'm also a person who understands that we're each here for a unique purpose. And when you can distinguish that purpose, which again is in one of the distinctions in the quantum think system, is called the whole movement of purpose. Mm-hmm. exactly for that purpose, to help you distinguish your purpose, because it's not just one thing, but it gets expressed in many ways throughout your lifetime when you're thinking from the whole of your life rather than increments. Well, I used to be that profession and now I'm this. I changed a lot. I had a lot of different experiences in terms of who I am. And before I got that distinction, oh, it's all connected. I used to think, is there something wrong with me? I keep changing my mind. I was in corporate management. I was this, I was a photographer. Why? Now I'm making a song. Anyway, and then I realized, and I say it like this, that divine wisdom presents us with all the experiences we need as training to live and express our purpose as our contribution in the world. So that's Dianne Collins.
Okay.
I'm in touch with it. I love it. I'm grateful for it. And I'm having a good time.
What is your life's purpose?
Oh, and speaking of purpose, is my life's purpose is just this: to be a catalyst for people to be able to have a joyful experience of life through connecting to what it takes to live in the state of full self-realization. I'm not a guru. Would never pretend to be one. I am just saying, I know I'm there. I've been called by some readers a bridge. So I'm here. My purpose is to teach the world and to quantum think, to create I like to think of it as, if I put it in the worldly sense, I'm here to create a quantum thinking world.
And finally, what was your best day?
My best day? Oh my goodness. That's too hard of a question. I don't think I could answer that question. Is that a new question? What is my best day? I think it sounds trite, but every day I don't relate to a best day. I do relate to every day creating the best day, creating a best day every day, because it can go either way, right? You
That
can
is
get
true.
pulled by you can get pulled by the circumstances. We all look at our phones, first thing I see and you could get pulled. I always say to my husband every day, what's the good news? And because I'm creating that. And he goes, well, there's not too much good news. I said, well, make something up. Seriously, this is a ritual. One of my personal rituals with him. We have relationship rituals. One of them is we read after breakfast every day something from a spiritual master, a spiritual work, so that we connect in together to that sacred spiritual realm as a start to our day, and to do it, as a couple. Anyway, but that's what I do. And I just say, you can have the same set of circumstances yesterday or today. Maybe one day you're feeling kind of, down, depressed, or, frustrated, as you mentioned, or just fed up with the whole thing. And the next day you can be alive and inspirited and ready to go, and just loving everything about your life. And nothing in the circumstance changed. So what was the difference? And this is the importance why the observer created reality is the heart of the matter, is that we get to say how it's going to be. And, it's like the old thing of the glass half empty, half full, but we actually do have that capability to look at it as I coach people in my masterclass video program. Today is a glorious day because you wake up and you create your intent for the day consciously. Today is a glorious day. It doesn't have an end goal to it. It's an activation of an energy field, of your resonant field. That's how I use the intent. It's like an omnipresent, all time, all the time, beyond time. You can create intent endlessly. And because of the way that the nature of reality works, where we actually create a resonant field and we attract that which is in sympathetic resonance with our field, and that's what happens, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't have to have a bad hair day just because you woke up into a set of circumstances. And can I just share one that was real for me last week? Mm-hmm. Is that everything seemed to be happening at once. We had to get new computers. Both of us we had to get new computers. I had to, buy our cars, which were anyway, it was new computers, new cars, new this, new that, iPads. And then everything, all these projects that I've been working on associated with other people, waiting months for, they all came in. Oh, can you have this by this? Writing forward for something, one's book, doing this, working on my show. And it was everything at once. And then the family, hi, I'm coming to visit. It's spring break. And it was like, what? So I thought, it was like, hi. And that's in addition to everything else that was going on. That's normal for, every day, just the reality of life every day. And I thought, why? And I was in this Peter Diamandis's Abundance 360. He's good friends with Tony Robbins. So that was one of his guests. He has all, unbelievable people. But what's different about that conference is that he's in a conversation with them. So it's not just they're giving a presentation. And and you get to see all the different things that they're doing. And I thought, okay, Miss Quantum Thinker here, instead of being in a state of overwhelm, how about creating an intent, which another way of saying intent is creating a new context that you're choosing to live from. Not because it's true or false, because intent transcends that domain, as you said earlier, no absolute fixed reality. So which is true? It's not about true or false. It's about what context for today am I going to live from? So this was in some part, you could do it without circumstances ruling it. But in this case, I was listening to all these, genius and, billionaire, self-made billionaire from technology, innovation in their 20s, and different people running different companies, a lot of different companies. And I thought, they're running like 5 companies. And I'm worried about buying a computer, a car, and, giving a birthday party. And I thought, well, who do I want to be in the world now? How do I want to play? And why am I relating to myself and giving myself an experience of overwhelm just from having, a few different activities, a lot of different activities in this case. Oh, and I had a cold on top of it. That didn't help. But, I still had to do it. So that was my shift I shifted the context. I created a new intent. And that's for the rest of my life. That's a transformation that I made consciously for the rest of my life by saying to myself, you know what? This is your life. This is your life. it's not going to be like all the projects are going to be finished tomorrow and you're going to go outside and lie on the beach. We happen to live on the beach in Miami, so I could do that. Right now I just look at it, but that's okay. I like looking at it. The point is that this is what I chose. This is an aspect of my purpose, is to be able to manage a lot of different details and try to bring them together for myself and for others in such a way that we can live in the bigger picture and have it be a joyful, bountiful life. And that was just an instantaneous shift in consciousness that I had to awaken myself to. How big or small do I want to play? And I'm choosing to live the big context.
Well, Dianne, I want to thank you so much for sharing with us here on the program, giving us so much time, and we thank you, and we look forward to having you back again in the near future.
I love it, and thank you so much, and thank you to everyone listening, and wishing you all the best. Thank you, Richard.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And those choices are rooted in the 21st century, ladies and gentlemen. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal and Jeanette, I'm listening. And Dad, be happy.
We're in a new world. You've got to think in a new way. You've got to think and sink or get driven to drink. Do it for yourself. Do it for us. Take a quantum leap in consciousness to a fully dimensional reality, the more accurate view of knowledge at the edge today. You've got to expand. Your thinking is bland. It should be banned, woman, child, or man. You're not in command. You think free, but between you and me, your thinking is shaped by the 17th century. Your thinking is based on an inaccurate view from the age of machines, and we're mechanical too. It's all too automatic. No wonder it's autocratic. What's worse, it's becoming more and more erratic. There's an increasing amount of static in thought patterns, automatic. It may have worked then, but it doesn't work now. No need for concern, 'cause I'll show you how to quantum think and sync with a new worldview, an expanded reality within me and in you. Quantum science is proving what ancient wisdom preaches. Start living as one being, not what your outer eye teaches. There may be distinctions, but no real separation. And we have been imbued with the power of creation. The most powerful force is the light of your awareness. Divine light revealed in all is justifiable fairness. Quantum science is showing what spiritual masters have said. Now you can quantum think so the wisdom can embed in the culture, and in you it's really one and not two. Instead, you start living the wisdom. It's alive in you. When you quantum think, you wake up. One thing you got to know, and know that it's true. You cannot see a new world from an old worldview. These are the principles to make that leap. Conscious intent, allowing infinite possibility. Non-local mind and intuition, success to mastery. Being in one conversation, it's transformation as distinct from change. Perspective of all perspectives, being centered, it's a master's game. Holistic and holographic, 4 aspects of knowing. Awaken yourself quick because your aura is showing. Leave unawareness and mere concept and get participatory. There are no separations now, you've learned that story. You finally can agree, you know it now, I know you see. There is no doubt about it, we are all energy. It's one living being, sister planets in the earth, the whole universe. No need to rehearse, the cosmos and us, it's all consciousness. When you quantum think, you wake up in consciousness. When you quantum think, you wake up now. You take the quantum leap and you live from the new. It's awesome, rad, it's groovy, and it's so easy too. The wisdom lives in me and it's way alive in you. Quantum think is a portal to the new worldview. You glean the physical, energetic, and the virtual too. The cosmic laws and the spiritual, where our hearts meet again. In prophecies, esoteric, that's the soul's domain. In the eyes of divine mystery, we really are all the same. This is the paradox and the irony. It's a cosmic boutique. We're all of us the same, and we're each of us unique. There's only one of me and just only one of you. To know you and to love you is to live as true. Check it out, your soul's journey. There are so many ways for you to live your purpose. You'll transcend this craze. The world will come together when you leave the haze. Awaken from the days, the limits of the good, but the very old days. When you quantum think, you wake up, you live consciously, with awareness and compassion, gratitude on your knees. You appreciate all the codes, all the magic we are given to create in this life your own dreams, your own heaven. When you quantum think, you wake up, you live beyond time, in paradise yours and mine. All you have to do is be conscious of what's in your mind, and not just when you feel like it, but aware all the time. You interrupt automatic habits, create intent. Tune into the bigger picture you and I are living in. You are happy, you are joyful, you live fully dimensionally. A faithful, trusted way to your own mastery. Quantum think now. It's time to begin. Do it right now, so we can all of us win. Do it for yourself. Do it for us. Take a quantum leap in consciousness. Do it for yourself and do it for us. Take a quantum leap in consciousness. Do it for yourself. Do it for us. Take a quantum leap in consciousness. Do it for yourself. Do it for us.